It's me again. Today is Thursday, June 30th, 2022. And I haven't made a video in a while, I know. I've been really busy at work. I started off as an accounts payable accountant. And I was an accountant. Then I was a contract negotiator. Now I'm a project manager. And I have to get permits in 5 different states. It's crazy. So I was very busy with those, and it was stressful. And when work ended, I just wanted to relax, and exercise and spend time with the farm animals and do farm chores, sadly, instead of YouTube video. But it worked out because there's been really no news until recently. Let's get into it. Earlier this week, there was an offering from Metamaterials. You can go visit Smokey. He has very good videos about that. Tony Market Moves also has good videos about that. There's a direct offering. A direct offering means that they're selling the shares directly to an entity of some sort. And then there were some warrants being sold, and the warrants have an exercise price of $1.75. The warrants can't be exercised for a minimum of 6 months, and then they expire after 5 years. So warrants is they sell you something now, and then you have the right to exercise it later on. Options don't create new stock. When you exercise options, new stock is not created. That's having control over current stock. Warrants, on the other hand, do create new stock. And so do offerings. So this, the price of MMAT went down. It was within this document, though, that they talked about how $5 million goes to the Oro Grande. The Oro Grande endeavors. A lot of people then get cause for concern about it. So it could go for a number of things. $5 million isn't going to drill you all your wells. You could get one well out of $5 million. Although it is cheaper if you have more lined up, because then your cost per well is less because you don't have to keep bringing in crews, right? You bring a crew for one well, you have, that high shipping cost, right? To get all the stuff there. If you drill 10 wells at once, then your cost can get spread out over those 10 wells. You see what I'm saying? The shipping cost to haul all that equipment there. I don't think this is to drill another well because it's only $5 million. I think it's to, this can be used to pay lease fees. Again, I've talked about this in the past, how mineral rights, oil and gas mineral rights, land ownership, and leases are 3 separate entities. You can be a landowner and not have any mineral rights to your property. That's really common if you buy property. Just because you have the property doesn't mean you own everything in that property. There are mineral rights, there are oil and gas rights. Do you own those rights in your property? This is where you need to find out before you buy that property, right? You can sell, if you own the oil and gas rights to your property like I do with mine. I don't know if there's any oil and gas under it, but there probably is. You can, and I do own those rights, luckily. You can sell those rights to somebody, or part of those rights, and then you get a royalty for the rights you own. Then there is a lease. Now, if somebody else has rights, I sold somebody else rights to my oil and gas. I said, yeah, you can have 50% for this amount. Okay, they buy that amount. But I own the land. They can't trespass on my land. So in order for them not to trespass on my land, they have to get me a lease. We need a lease. And then they pay me a lease fee to come on my land to get that stuff. So also that, incurs any equipment that they build on. They got to access it. That's property you can't utilize because they're using it. So again, oil and gas sales are rights, property rights, and leases are kind of 3 different entities in Texas. But for Torchlight or Oilco to get the oil and gas rights. They do have to pay a lease fee to University Lands, which is the landowner. So this could be used for those lease fees. This could also be used for salary payments of the managing team. I know a lot of people think, oh, see, this shows that there's not like a potential buyer because you're paying a salary manager, you're paying more money into this. So there very well could be a buyer. I think there are interested parties. I wholeheartedly believe that there are interested parties in this or grande. You can't announce, turns out, a definitive sale until this spins out because it can't be associated with Meta's books. However, Meta is loaning money or giving money to oil and gas operations, but they really can't have anything on their books. As I've explained to other people, this has been a steep learning process, I think, for everybody involved, not just like us as traders or investors, but I think it's also been a learning process involved for people directly tied to this as well. That's why dates keep getting pushed back with them, versus, and, to be completed by March. March came and went, nothing, right? There's a spin-out process to be completed by March, and that didn't get completed. So, because those timelines haven't been met, I think it's been a steep learning curve for everybody involved. And again, this is all speculation on my part. Speculation. I speculate everything, A speculation is a hypothesis, right? You want to talk speculation? That's a fancy word for that's hypothesis. Oh no, speculating means you're guessing. No, that's a guess. Hypothesis means like you have evidence behind your guess, right? I show you the evidence behind my guesses. That's a hypothesis. That's speculation. You want to get something more concrete, that's when it becomes a thesis, is when it's more concrete. You have a thesis. Like you've tested this under various circumstances, and there you go. It becomes a fact once you have enough empirical evidence behind it. Otherwise, it's just a theory or a thesis with only, qualitative. That's why psychology is a qualitative science, because things vary so individually that you can't get any concrete, quantitative across the board, results. It's all per person, per individual circumstances that this person went into, their collective experiences, the genetic condition, the environmental condition. All these collective experiences make something truly unique. Hence, you can't quantify it. You can only qualify it and base it off certain case studies. Well, this case study did this. Maybe this will do this. That's why if they have an R value of 40% in psychology, they're popping champagne, because it's very much a qualitative science, and that's why you say it's a soft science. At any rate, as you can tell, I have some academic knowledge. I probably have more than what I lead on or I like to admit. One of those is being emissions and environmental science, with a heavy emphasis on emissions and pollution. So when I was going through the motions of that, a lot of them were talking about different sort of models and speculations of what America would look like, in a global warming situation as the earth heated up. What would turn it more into jungle? What would be more desert? And those things change every 2 years. Those models change every 2 years. Where I live, it's either jungle or desert. Jungle or desert. Right now, it's turning into more desert, which is scary. So I hope it won't. But let's talk about, again, Tony and The Trend Is Your Friend, aka C-Plant. They were talking about this. So there's this one group, Earth Warriors, They want to sue because big bad oil and gas is producing too much ozone. And Abbott says no, Governor Abbott. Now, as a lot of people don't like Abbott in Texas, I don't particularly, that's politics. I will mention the Great Freeze of 2021. I think a lot of people, got angry then. The Great Freeze of 2021 because it directly affected me. Anyhow, Abbott says no. We're not kowtowing to you. And so let's talk about this whole ozone thing, because a lot of people have been wanting me to comment on it. And I said, I should, because I've actually talked about this whole zeitgeist of ozone. It's quite interesting. And, it all boils down to what agenda you want to push. You see a lot of the Cheney administration, the Bush-Cheney administration, you're bringing in people from different companies, CEOs of different companies. You're putting them in governmental regulation positions. You got this revolving door type of thing. But it works both ways on both sides of the party. And so Abbott says no, the Permian, we're at a point now where we are more dependent in our oil production than in the past quite some time. And I've talked about this. In our lifetime, my lifetime, my parents' lifetime, this is the first time we've been more independent, as independent as we can. Worked in our favor when Biden administration said no new drilling on public lands. They started the auctions earlier this year, and then that got nixed. They did 7 auctions, stop, nix. Luckily, where we are in Texas, it's private lands. University lands is actually private lands. Texas has the largest amount of private land in the union. It has the least amount of public land. We like things privatized in Texas. I know a lot of people don't like privatization. They both have their pros and cons. With the private lands, that gives more value to our Oro Grande. Abbott says no to the EPA. This lobbyist group wants to push on the EPA more ozone regulations for oil and gas upstream productions, which, if you look at the evidence, really isn't there as much as you think it would be there with ozone. I'm going to point you to a couple of different studies that this came about. I did something, so I've been looking into this ozone thing for years. At this point, it's been over well over a decade is when I started looking into this, as well as the whole cow methane emissions, and actually had to dissect that paper for a different related entity. But the whole cows create methane, it was based on a particular model that could happen, but people go with it. People run with it. Okay. This is a similar case. So I said, well, where are they getting these ozone from? What study are they pulling this ozone from? The whole methane in cows, I've read that study. I know what model they are pulling that off of. And like I said earlier, models change every 2 years. It was every 5 years back then. 10 plus years ago, it was every 5 years. Now it's every 18 months, 2 years. Models change. Things are going fast. And they're coming out with some new models every 18 to 24 months. It was about every 24 months, and then COVID hit, and they kind of halted things, but they're starting up again. So I looked into it, and NOAA, the Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, NOAA says that a university in Colorado claims that ozone comes from oil and gas productions and VOCs, volatile organic compounds. And we say, okay, we know methane, comes from oil and gas, right? I've talked about the methane. I've talked about Elon Musk, how he wants liquid methane. I've mentioned in other chats how we're at a point now with our technology. Humanity is at a point now where we have technology where it's cheaper to extract these things from the garbage and pollution than it is to mine it. We can go get methane now and extract it from the garbage, the pollution. Look, we just turned a pollution problem and made it value added. Methane is the cleanest burning rocket fuel we have. I have a video earlier that says, what does Elon Musk want to do with the Oro Grande? It talks about the liquid methane. Liquid methane, and I show the charts. Liquid methane is probably the cleanest burning rocket fuel you have. Rocket fuel is going to pump out a ton of pollution. The most manageable pollution is carbon dioxide that we have. And, you know, that's basically the biggest byproduct of liquid methane. It doesn't produce as many particulates as other types of rocket fuel. It doesn't produce as many VOCs as other types of rocket fuel once methane burns. It's like the cleanest burning fuel we got for rocket fuel. And we can get it from a garbage situation. So we're turning garbage into value added. Similarly enough, NanoWeb with metamaterials can do the whole water filtration from fracking water, where we can get some rare earth minerals, lithium, which formerly is a heavy metal. You know, it's a heavy metal. It's going to poison you. But we can extract this pollution and garbage from this fracking water when it recycles the fracking water too, and it doesn't put heavy metals into other water tables or areas. Two, it's cheaper, right? Because we're getting it out of garbage. We're turning garbage into value-added things like Wally. So we're at a point of technology now where we can like start to change things, turn garbage into value-added commodities. Or maybe Mad Max. Who knows? Witness me. So propane in itself is a midstream thing. You don't extract propane from the ground. Let's talk about that propane. You know, I live in Texas. Hank Hill, he sells propane. Propane is a midstream thing. You have to get it from refinery, from the refining process. That's how you get propane. It's a combination of like butane and other hydrocarbons. Before propane came about, it was largely butane because you're able to refine butane easily, more easily than propane. You had butane. In fact, I have an old butane tank on my property from this old homestead that was on my property. The house is long gone, you know, but there is a butane tank where it was in front of the house. There's remnants of some garden and some chicken coop over there, but there's like a big, like, you know, 100-gallon butane tank that's in the ground. So they use butane, and now they do propane because it's a bit cleaner burning. It lasts longer, but propane is an amalgam of different types of hydrocarbons, and to get that, you need to refine the process. So this company wants to target upstream oil and gas when really it should be the refining process. It has to be that, you know, and they're pushing this upstream oil and gas, saying that this is producing ozone. But really, the ozone that they're referring to from the propane comes from the refining process of oil and gas. There are gases that come out when you do some oil and gas stuff. I talked about my driller friend here, the hydrogen sulfide gas, which is a very deadly VOC. In the study again from NOAA, it talks about, which they didn't even do, they just cited it from a random Colorado study. Like I said, it was this random what if study that kind of gets filtered through and somebody picks it up and runs with it, right? So you have my driller friend, and you have this hydrogen sulfide gas, which is very toxic. It's this deadly gas that builds up in the ground from the fossilization process millions of years ago. You have this deadly trapped gas. It comes out, and, you know, it can oxidize with the air. This article talks about it reacts with sunlight. That's called oxidation. The energy from the sunlight oxidizes this. This is why you see haze around cities where there's ozone and particulates and NOx, and it's oxidized pollution, oxidized gases. So oxidized, and it can cause ozone. Okay, well, there's lots of deadly gas. Maybe we want to focus on how are we going to control this deadly gas, hydrogen sulfide gas? A lot of times you will burn the gas, because burning gas, while it does cause some things, can mitigate other things. What do you want to do with the gas here? It comes down to what do you want to do with the gas problem. There's no perfect answer in all this. And we can't say, oh, we'll just limit our energy. We're going to limit so what are we going to do? Go back to being dependent on these other countries which have conflict? Or we can settle the conflict here. What agenda are they trying to push? So let's go with ethanol. And studying, the whole pollution and the ethanol and ozone. I had to study ethanol. And ethanol is not as clean as you would think it is. And I'm surprised that nobody says ethanol in any of this for ozone, when ethanol is like a huge contributor to ozone. You want to talk about contributor, but oh no, it's clean energy. It's green. Okay, ethanol is not as green as you would think it is. So corn ethanol, there's different types. You get ethanol from sugar. A big user of ethanol fuel is Brazil in South America. Brazil grows a lot of sugar cane. They grow a lot of sugar cane. Sugar forever. Who doesn't love sugar? It's the world's most addictive, popular drug, sugar. Wars have been fought over these drugs. Sugar. Sugar is a drug. It's one heck of a drug. And before you had the war on drugs now and cartels, you had sugar cartels back in the day. Okay? This stuff has been going on for millennia. But, we love sugar. It's an addictive drug. It's an addictive substance. I also love caffeine. Wars have been fought over coffee and tea. Sugar, when you're not producing it, you can also burn it as fuel. Have, also vehicles that just do ethanol. When it's cheaper, they just run on ethanol. When they have bumper crops, they just run on ethanol. And studies have shown, I'll try to bring this up, that is a huge ozone, which is a big greenhouse gas. That's a huge ozone contributor because of the running on ethanol for like 4 months out of the year. And then they switch to gasoline. And then the ozone goes down because they switched to gasoline. But ethanol is a huge contributor to ozone. Okay, in America, only some places can grow sugar, like Florida. Tropical places can grow sugar cane. But the big country in the center grows corn, and it's not like sweet corn either. If you've ever seen the documentary King Corn, it's like the corn, because it's like high fructose corn syrup, ethanol, it's all the sugar, South America gets sugar cane. We're like corn sugar country, okay? We're the land of corn. And guess who owns the #1 cornfields in America? Bill Gates. Oh boy. So he's the corn star. I love that channel, by the way, Cole the Corn Star. But Bill Gates wants to be a corn star. And so he's the biggest private landowner in America and the largest farm owner. He has all this corn, he's like, oh, we're going to push all this green fuel. Ha. To grow all that corn, you need a lot of water. Okay, you need a lot of water. People go, oh, well, you see, look at all these cows. Again, they're blaming the poor cow. Look at all these cows and how much, corn you have to feed the cow and how much water that takes. And then how much goes into just getting a little bit of meat. It's all this pollution. Well, cows can graze on grass. And there's a whole system, I won't get into that. That's non-factory farming. That's more sustainability. So and if you study this cites, again, the movie Chinatown. I cite Chinatown quite a bit, that Jack Nicholson movie. Especially in California, again, you have very dry, arid areas which need a lot of irrigation. They get great sunshine, but as a result, sunshine and wind, you need a lot of water. The plants evaporate the water on their leaves pretty quickly. So you put corn there or anything else, let's talk about corn, and you need all this irrigation. So a lot of your water use goes to irrigation for agriculture to get this ethanol, which is then producing all this ozone. It's not as clean as you would think. We have water issues. We have fertilizer runoff issues to grow this corn quicker, grow it bigger, grow it better. It causes ozone. You still have to process the corn and haul it, and you have all that, right? So there's still a processing and a hauling and a transportation fee. We can transport oil and gas, crude or refined in pipelines to reduce the pollution. When it reduces cost, it reduces pollution. It's terrific. It's win-win. There's no corn pipeline yet, okay? There's no corn pipeline. There's no sugarcane pipeline, so you have to truck it or train it, right? Truck or train it into the refineries, and then maybe you can put it in a pipeline because you have ethanol, or you truck or train, you truck it to the fueling station. But if you look at Brazil as a model, it produces quite a bit of ozone. So it's through learning about pollution and studying pollution as much as I did and emissions that you learn that certain things which are pushed as being clean energy are not. That's just like they're trying to push. Another good documentary is Fathead, which I talk about. That movie kind of changed my life. The guy who did Fathead talked about this with fat and how like sugar consortium got together and they pushed the whole idea that fat's bad. If you have low fat, you have high sugar to make up for the taste. And people think like this, the fat was causing obesity when really it was all the sugar that they were consuming was a big contributor to obesity. And so it's what do you want to push, right? And so fat was made the bad guy for a while, and, low fat, in the 80s and 90s. And then all of a sudden, people start to realize what was going on, and then, it's the sugar people who want higher sugar sales, So, again, like ethanol, you have all these corn and sugar industries. Ethanol produces a lot of ozone, which is a big greenhouse gas. Now, you do have nitric oxides, NOx. You do have volatile organic compounds, which can oxidize, but they can also be deadly. There's, cyanide's a volatile organic compound, hydrogen sulfide, you got all these deadly gases. Chlorine's a volatile organic compound. It's a deadly gas. You have things trapped in the earth that are deadly gases, like my fish tank, okay? If I have a fish in there. If I were to start rooting around in the bottom of the substrate, there's trapped detritus and debris down there, which the plants love. The roots of these plants are feeding off of those gases and those nutrients from that detritus decaying at the bottom of this substrate. But if I move this fish tank around, I go around and I just start like taking all of it out with the fish in there, he's gonna die because one, a bunch of particulates get in his water where he breathes. Two, a lot of that deadly trapped gas. Like that's a big thing in an aquarium. If like you move an aquarium or gas gets, you have trapped deadly gas gets out. Father Fish, he's another big YouTuber fish guy. He'll tell you, you cap your substrate with like an inch or 2 inches of sand. Anyhow, the plants love, I always have to trim my plant tank. They love the detritus that eventually filters at the bottom of the substrate. And the dead snails, snails live, snails die. You have different freshwater copepods in that tank. They live, they die. It gets sunken down to the bottom. Things kind of, work their way to the bottom. And that deadly gas kind of gets trapped there. So Earth moves in a similar process. I think it's an issue of how to mitigate this poison gas, if that's how they want to do it, rather than cut off our energy supply. You're going to cut off our energy supply, make things even higher. I don't agree with that. In this one instance, I will agree with Abbot. There's a lot of stuff I don't agree with him on, but I do agree with him in this instance. We need to stay independent on our own energy production. We're at a time now, again, like I said, the first time basically in our lifetime, my lifetime, my parents' lifetime. My grandparents sadly passed away, but, they saw it in their lifetime as children. But now we're back to that point where we have enough technology where we're independent again. We're independent. And also, Biden wants to curtail offshore drilling, which, by the way, I'm not that familiar with. I tell people I'm not an offshore person. But there's a whole offshore drilling thing going on right now. So that's my take on this. Again, like I said, there's a lot of things that are touted as clean energy aren't as clean as you would think that they are. This goes with a lot of things, people like solar. But we're at a point now with our technology, like I said, where we can kind of get value-added things out of the garbage that is already being produced that has all this heavy metals in it. It's poison now, but we need it. It's poison if you ingest it, but we kind of need it to further ourselves. We need it for the solar. The wind. I had a friend who worked at the NASA Ames wind tunnels, and he was going over with me how, the wind farm in Rio Vista, California, this is when I lived in California, actually had quite a weather effect on the Bay Area, and that's what he studied. So, a lot of big wind farms can affect the weather. I'll tell you that. Where I live, the weather has been actually affected a bit by the windmills. There's no, just because you say it's clean energy, there's no such thing as a free lunch. That's, do you want desertification in this area so somebody else can have power over there? What do you want? And until we get to the point where we can just mine rare earths on asteroids and then make solar panels that go out on Venus or something and kind of beam that energy back, shade Venus on the hot side, and then we get some energy, got some space solar panels, until that happens, we're at kind of at a very important crossroads here. All right, I've rambled on so much, but like I said, that's my take on it. It's something that I feel comfortable speaking quite a bit about, is emissions and where people are getting their information from. Okay, well, it seems to be boiling down to this one particular study talking about this one particular thing, but it kind of gets magnified to produce a platform. All right, guys. I'm hoping the S1 drops soon. Again, there might be an 8K that comes out before the S1 because CEI had an 8K come out the day before their S1. I'm looking for both of those. I will see you soon. Goodbye.